Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Talks with Keith. I'm your host, author J. Keith Brown, and I am so thankful that you have chosen to listen to this podcast, where each week I am going to do my best to bring you some exciting guests who are going to tell us all about themselves and their book. And I have a great guest to do with you to share with you today, and we're going to talk about one of the most interesting plans of releasing a book that I have heard of. So welcome to Marissa Lima. Marissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
It is so good to have you on, and I appreciate your willingness to share with us. And the first thing that I want to do is just ask you, if you would, to tell us a little bit about you, because I think as a reader myself, it always helps when I can get to know the author a little bit, find out a little bit more about them. So I just wanted to see if you could share a little bit about who you are as a person.
Sure, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Virginia. Um, that is always, I'm a mid-Atlantic girl. That's just, always going to be home to me. And these days I live just outside of Memphis. My husband and I, we have three children. Um, they are all young adults now, so I don't have any babies anymore. And our dog, Maltzy, our little mini dachshund, she's our diva. But yeah, so I live outside of Memphis, Tennessee. I My day job is with the American Cancer Society. I'm in fundraising, and I believe passionately in what the American Cancer Society is doing. And we'll talk a little later about this, but I'm actually going to be donating a portion of the proceeds from this book to the American Cancer Society because I believe so much in what they're doing. So, and as a writer, I have been writing for as long as I can remember. My first real memory of writing a book, I was 10 years old and I had a spiral notebook and I sat down and wrote a book by hand, just filled a whole spiral notebook. I sure wish I had that.
Mm. Oh,
Goodness
yeah,
knows
of
where that
course.
might be
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
But I just remember writing, from a very young age. It was always an outlet for me. I'd write letters, when things were difficult. It was a good way to journal and work through things. And then I just started writing stories and books. And I mean, I've probably written at least a dozen books. I haven't the foggiest idea where most of them are anymore. They're on old computers or old spiral notebooks somewhere, but I just never did anything with them because the publishing industry is just, it's antiquated. It's just really kind of a nightmare. And so I always thought, you know what, I enjoyed the journey. I loved the writing. I set it aside and moved on to something else. And so now this whole self-publishing world is just, is becoming more mainstream. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to actually do something with one of these. What have I got to lose?
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I decided to pursue that. So I've published, this is the first in a series. And you mentioned that I have kind of an unorthodox way that I'm releasing it. We can talk about that more in a minute, I guess. But yeah, so this is the first one that I've put out there in the world, and just waiting to see, how it's received and where it might go, and keep writing, just whether this flops or not, I'm not gonna stop writing because I just love doing that, and that's why I felt like I have nothing to lose by doing this one because I'm already doing the writing. I can just put it out there and maybe somebody else will enjoy it as well.
Well, and I know that putting excuse me, we people write all the time, but when you actually put your work out to the general public, I mean, we're giving our writing not to my mom or dad who's supposed to say it's good. We're giving it to the world, and
Right.
we never know how the world is going to receive what we write. So it's a very I think it takes a lot of bravery for people to do that. So I commend you on that. Congratulations on taking that step
Oh,
to
well,
do
thank
that.
you. It does make me feel very vulnerable. Yeah, it's a vulnerable feeling. And I told my husband, maybe I don't want people to read this because they might think I'm a little nuts. The stuff that goes on in a writer's head, I don't know, maybe other people will think it's a little crazy, but yeah, so it does. It's certainly, you open yourself up to a whole lot of things by doing that. But you know what? It's all part of the fun. People may love it, they may hate it. Reading is such a subjective
It
thing.
is.
I
It
might
really
read a
is. Yeah.
book and just think it's the best thing ever, and the next person just can't, hates it. So I know that, and I have a thick skin. So,
Well,
if
good for
people
you. Yeah.
love it, great. If not, then they can move on to the next thing.
That's a healthy way to think about it for sure. Now, you
Sure,
you
yeah.
said you started writing when you were 10. So were you always just a creative child, or do you think that there was some motivation, there was something that sort of drove that passion, or did someone else, sort of spark that interest in you? I'm just curious why you think that may be the case.
I think I was always a creative child. I come from a creative family. When I look at them, I don't feel like I'm a creative person because they do, my mother and brother both paint and they're musicians and things like that. And the writing feels like something I've just always done. I think it was an outlet very early on as a child. Um, I started journaling very early and that sort of thing. And so I think that just kind of progressed. I've always loved reading. So it felt like probably a natural progression between the fact that it was an outlet for me and I enjoyed reading, and it just kind of all came together as, I poured that back out into my writing. Um, it helped me deal with a lot of things when I was young, got me through some tough times. I think being able to put things on paper gets them out of your head, all that stuff
Right.
that's floating
Right.
around in your head sometimes. When you can get it down on paper, I think that's very therapeutic. So I think it probably
It
started as
truly
kind
is.
of a
Yeah.
form of therapy.
It makes perfect
Yeah.
sense, and I've heard
So
that many times, and I actually also hear that from readers that go, just sitting down with a good book and reading it sort of puts me in a form of therapy, right? So there's a time of escape, there's a time of relaxation, there's a time of
mhm.
adventure, and it just, so reading can be that as well. And so we always, I think, want to put our passion into our work and hope that it resonates with someone who will connect with it. And I know that you've done this. So let's talk about the book. And if you're watching this on YouTube, this is going to be out on podcast for you audio people, and it's also available on YouTube if you're a visual person. But in the visual, you can see that Marissa, who goes by the pen name, obviously, of MD Lima, um, has the book called The Knowing, book one. So I want you to please tell us a little bit about this book. What gave you the idea? Where did the inspiration come from? And how does the plot open up to us? Kind of tell us a little bit about this exciting new work that you've got.
Thank you. Sure. Okay. So the knowing is it's actually a project. It's an ongoing project. And this is the first piece of the project. So I've put this out on Amazon. It's a very short read, about 100 pages. It's intended for a young adult audience, but we all know that that's a big audience because that opens up to a lot of maybe not so young adults. Um, and it's a dystopian novel, a little bit of sci-fi, kind of that genre, which is not at all what I've ever written before. So I'm not quite even sure how I ended up down this path, but um, dystopian novel, and it involves a society where people are able to find out what year they'll die. And as a matter of a discovery, without revealing too much, um, there is a technique that's discovered where people can, when an infant is born, choose whether or not they will later find out what year they will die. Not the date, they don't know exactly. They just will can find out what year of their life, say third year number is 38, you'll die when you're 38. And so the first book in the series is really kind of laying the architecture for how this happened and what does it mean for the society that people will know how long they're going to live.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so the first book is really very much about laying the groundwork. There is some character development, but a lot of it is laying that groundwork for what essentially is going to be a new society. because as this change and this opportunity unfolds and people are making the decision for their newborn babies as to whether or not they'll find out how long they'll live, um, it changes everything. And so it becomes the society of the known. The known are those whose number has been revealed, and the unknown, those whose parents chose not to find out when they would die. And so that creates so many subcultures
Yeah.
and divisions and a lot of clash even among families about whether or not this was the right thing for a child. um, there's a lot of dark things that can come from that knowledge. And so the first book is laying that groundwork, and then what I want people to do is respond. So
Okay,
I'm
this is
asking
let me just stop you just a minute,
okay,
okay?
sure.
Before we get into this, because this is where it really gets interesting, folks. So you pay attention where we're going. Before we do that, I just have a couple quick questions. Um,
Sure.
Now, this is you said the parents are making the decision. So this knowing is a parent decides when their child is born whether they're going to get this information. Now, are they is it automatically disclosed to the child, or is that another level of the knowing unknown where the parents might know and the child doesn't, or does the child automatically know? You know what I'm saying? So there could be
Right,
multiple
right.
layers here, I would assume.
Absolutely. So the way it will unfold is that the decision is made when the baby is born because there's a procedure.
Okay.
But the actual information doesn't get revealed until the child turns 5. So on
Okay.
their 5th birthday is when that their numeral is revealed.
Okay.
And so that's when they find out what year they'll die.
Gotcha.
And the
Gotcha.
implications of that
Oh, I can't even
to
get my
me
head
are just
around that.
mind-boggling.
I know. I'm just
Yeah,
sitting here going
yeah.
like,
There's
"Oh my
just so
gosh."
many things. Like,
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
the things that it would affect, I mean, my mind just races all the time with different possibilities, from
Yeah.
just things like getting a line of credit, when you knew you were going to be dying in 10 years, that sort of thing. I mean, so it's crazy
And
stuff. I mean,
how you would
it
abuse
affects
that credit,
everything. Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
I'm
And
gonna
what
go
does
out
that
and
mean
buy
for
me a brand new
society?
yeah, exactly. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, heck yeah, I'm going shopping.
Exactly. I'm gonna
Um,
pull this credit card out everywhere I'm going if I'm gonna die this year. Who cares, right?
yeah. And so, like if that becomes a norm, then obviously the credit
Yeah.
industry has to change. So it's just, I mean, it could potentially affect absolutely every facet of everything that we do. Obviously I can't touch all of those in a book, but so the first book is laying that groundwork for here's what's happened. Here is how it's starting to change society. And then book 2 is going to be really jumping into the characters in this society and how this information, either knowing or not knowing, affects the way they live their life. And so there'll be a lot more character development. But what we were talking about earlier is because this is part of a series, I've intentionally made the pieces short. I'm asking them to invest in book 1, read book 1, and at the end of book 1, there's a prompt, there's an email for you to respond and talk to me about what did you think about the storyline? What did you think about the architecture that's been laid out? Where do you think the story would go? Would you want to know? And how would that
Mm.
affect the way you live your life? And I want people, it's kind of an interactive experience of sorts. I told my daughter it's almost like a choose your own adventure book, but flipped upside down, where you guys are going to give me the ideas and then I want to weave them into the story. And so the first one ends very abruptly. And several of my readers have been like, what on earth? It just, I wasn't ready. And that was kind of the idea, was I wanted it to
That's
just,
a good place to
whoa,
leave them, by the way. What
yeah,
more could you want?
yeah.
Leave
And
have a reader go like, "I need more," That's the perfect
well, and
place.
that too, I think it makes it easier for readers to respond
Yes.
because it was so abrupt and they were just kind of left hanging there. I want all of those emotions that they're feeling when they're left hanging there. I want those. I want
Okay.
people to tell me, what were you thinking when it ended? What did you want to see next? So I want to be able to include the readers. I want readers to be able to be a part of the series. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be able to use every, storyline that I received, but I would love to be able to collect as many of them as I can and weave them into the storyline, and then continue like that. Then book two, at the end of book two, let's do it again. Let's respond again. I see this maybe being a 3 to 4 part series, and ultimately being, a full novel. Um, but look at how many people could have the opportunity to be a part of writing this story, if they respond with thoughts about where it might go or how it would affect them. So I just think it's a collaborative storytelling. I love the idea of a communal, effort. I just think it could be something really different and fun, more of a project and experience, than anything else. So I would love for people to be a part of it. If you hate the book, tell me why. Tell me what you would have done differently, or if you're interested in it, tell me, would you want to know when you were going to die? How would that affect the way you lived your life? What would you choose for your child? you know? So I just think it opens up so many questions for us, um, as a society, as individuals. Um, and you hear people talk all the time about, you know, live like you were dying, and it's a cliche, and we'd all love to do that, but how many of us really are? And I want people to think about that. I want people to think about the time that we have here. And am I spending it the way I would spend it if I knew I only had X number of years? Would I spend it differently? Would I make different choices? I think most of us would.
Yeah,
So
probably
I
so.
just
Yeah,
think it's a fascinating concept, and I hope
it,
people will
it
want to
is.
be a part of it.
It is a very intriguing idea. I mean, I'm actually fascinated myself. So don't be surprised if I'm one of the ones that read it
I
and
hope you
respond.
will.
But
That
yeah, I
would
mean,
be great.
I think I think it's a very clever idea. And I think you said you were a parent, and I'm a parent, and I think about my, of course, my son's grown. I'm an old guy, so my son my son is grown and married. But I'm thinking, would I want to know that, right? And how would that affect my relationship with my child? And if you knew your child was
Hmm.
going to die young, would would that affect the way that you treated them? And all of these things keep going on and on. The
Right.
what ifs are incredible. And in fact,
Right.
in my opinion, Arissa, you
Yeah.
probably have got more than 3 or 4 in this series that you could do, because I think
Maybe so. We'll
the
see.
possibilities are endless, in my opinion, based on what you've told us. So what is the voice in this book? Is it the third person all knowing, or is it from a first person perspective? How's it written?
So the first book is a little misleading because it actually starts out with the first person narrator, and then she's forgotten. She becomes kind of this subconscious voice throughout the book. So it is first person, and I bring that back around in the end. And the remaining stories will be more character focused, and so those will be probably more first person type things.
From the perspective of the
But
different
yeah,
characters.
so
Okay.
correct,
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah. Yeah.
And I know that Marissa wants you to know that, and based on what she told you a little bit about her and her work with the Cancer Society, that we want to make sure that you understand as well that a portion of the proceeds of this book will go to the breast cancer uh, work. Is that right, Marissa?
Right, right. So the American Cancer Society has a movement called Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. It's a campaign every year. It's held in cities all around the nation, and thousands of people come out and walk in honor, in memory, in support of breast cancer survivors and those that we've lost to breast cancer. So, yes, a portion of the proceeds of the sale of this book are going to go to that because it's just very important to me. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's also my day job. And I just believe very much in what the American Cancer Society is doing. So I want to support them, even outside of what I do every day on my 9 to 5 job. So
Sure.
but so the better the book does, the more I'm able to donate. And I forgot to mention earlier too, that anybody who responds in the way that they're prompted at the end of the book will get book two for free.
Mm.
So I'm asking people to invest in book one. It's $10, no, whether it's the Kindle, the paperback. I think the hardback might be a few dollars more, but it's $10 to invest in book one. And then if you will respond to that email address at the end of book one, you'll get book two for free when it's published. Because I realize that $10 for a little paperback book is a lot. That's a high number in the industry. But I'm asking you, it's almost like my own little Kickstarter campaign. I'm asking you to invest in that first one and then be a part of the second, third, and so on, by responding with thoughts about where the story should go. So I don't think I mentioned that earlier. So keep that in mind. If you buy book one and respond, you'll get book two as well.
Yeah, I mean,
So
just think about that, folks. You're if you invest in this book, it's called The Knowing by M.D. Lima. You can find it on Amazon. You invest in this book, you're getting a good read. You're getting to participate in the future stories and maybe having a voice in how that works out. You're also getting a chance to get the second volume free by getting involved in this one. And you're also those of you who maybe have connection to the American Cancer Society, or you have someone who has battled cancer, as most of us have in our families, our friend network. Then you're doing good work there as well. So man, that's a three good reasons to consider buying The Knowing by MD Lima. Um, well, I tell you,
thank you.
I'm excited about this, and I love to hear the plots of these stories from authors, and I've talked to so many authors over my life, but to hear this is fascinating. I have to tell you, I really am intrigued by it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, it all stems, I mean, from a lot of things, but uh, over the course of the past, decade or so, I've lost a lot of friends very suddenly. And of course, all of us went through a lot of loss during COVID. And so there was a lot of checking in with myself about how was I living my life, knowing that any day could be my last. My husband and I lost 6 friends over a period of 2 years, just in all very sudden,
Mm.
unexpected ways. And that was all right about the time COVID was rolling in. So between those losses and COVID, we did a lot of kind of self-study about, how we were living our lives and what was truly important to us. And I think this concept, just kind of grew from that, like thinking a lot about, how am I living my life? How many years do I have? Am I using them the way I'd want to if I, could look back and plan it differently? So, and like I said, sci-fi, that's not ever really been my genre.
Mhm.
Um, but I love reading sci-fi and I love dystopian novels. I think if readers like The Hunger Games or The Giver, Handmaid's Tale, I think any of those dystopian type of novels, if you like those, I hope that you'll like this story as well, because it kind of has a similar feel to those. So, yeah, so I hope that folks will check it out. And like I said, the better the book does, the more I can give to the American Cancer Society, which I really hope to be able to do. So
Well, and I hope that too, very much, Marissa, because I hope that it does well and that we do see a lot of money going to help with research and care for those in need. Um, I want to, I just really want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming on this podcast. I appreciate you coming to share this with with our audience. I will make sure, folks, that there's a link to the book. There'll be Marissa's information in the show notes. There'll be a link to the book that you can find it on Amazon. If you have any questions, you can reach out, hopefully to Marissa as well. Um,
absolutely.
and Marissa, if you would, and before while I'm thinking of it, before I forget, make sure that I have your contact information, maybe Instagram or whatever you're using. And I'll put
Sure.
that in the show notes as well so that people can connect with you.
Great.
And we
I'd
just
love
want to
that.
share. Yeah, share the love here. That's what we're about, trying to let people know a little bit about the exciting things that we have coming in the written word and the fabulous stories that people have to tell through their books. So, is there anything else that you want to share with about yourself or the book or anything that we haven't touched on? And I want to just make sure that I give you every chance to do that.
I think we've had a great opportunity to chat here. I'll just reiterate that it's a quick read. It's
Mhm.
intentional. Like I said, it's for young adults. And so the other thing I had kind of in the back of my mind maybe was that this is something they can pick up and read quickly and move on. We've all got that attention span of a gnat
Mm.
these days. And so this is just it's I have got a stack of books on my nightstand that is just ridiculous. And I carry this shame for all these books I have that I've not gotten to yet. So
I
maybe this
understand.
is one that you can pick up and it's a quick read and you can feel like you've accomplished something. And then when book two comes out, we can do it all again. So no, I hope that people will check it out. I hope that they'll enjoy it, and I hope that people will want to be a part of book two. So send me some ideas, folks.
It sounds exciting. Thank you so much, Marissa, for coming on. Again, it's called The Knowing, and it's by she uses M.D. Lima, Lima. And so if you can't wait and you got to go right now and check it out, it's on Amazon. Just go and check it out. M.D. Lima, the book is The Knowing. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for joining me on this
Fabulous.
podcast. It was a pleasure having you. I hope that you enjoyed the experience, and I hope that through this
I
podcast,
have very much. Thank you.
good. And I hope some people get to know you just a
Absolutely.
little bit more. All right. Thank you for joining me, folks. I
All right.
appreciate it. This is called Book Talks with Keith, and I hope that you will join me again next week as we bring an exciting new author to you and their works that they pour their heart and soul into. Until next time, make it a great day. Bye bye.